Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly broadcast dedicated to helping you make your number, but getting your peers to share with you how they make theirs. Today we're going to demonstrate how to capture the attention of customers and prospects with great marketing campaigns. Now, why this topic on this day? Campaign budgets are limited, and these campaigns need to generate revenue. In B2B, marketing campaigns generate revenue when they are hyper-targeted and do not when they are a spray and pray approach. So today, we will demonstrate how to generate a return on that campaign dollar. My name is Greg Alexander. I'm the CEO of SBI, and I'm also your host today. And helping me with our demonstration is the CMO of Bravo Solution. Her name is Andrea Brody. Andrea, would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, Greg. I'm glad to be here. My name is Andrea Brody. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Bravo Solution. We deliver strategic procurement solutions for global procurement organizations around the world. I've been with the company about a year and a half, and I'm delighted to be here.
Okay. And when you say strategic procurement solutions, what does that mean?
It means that when we talk about procurement, it's generally always been around increasing savings. Everyone always, if anyone is anyone, you know, in the B2B world, when you're doing a deal, you're always going to get hit with procurement. And when we talk about strategic procurement, it really is the thought of going beyond just cost savings, but we say there are 4 value levers that procurement can bring to an organization to increase value, and it's around risk management. You see all the different problems with suppliers using, child labor. Of course, it's savings. It's also corporate social responsibility, and really helping drive innovation, which some people think, well, how can procurement do that? But they can, because suppliers are a big part of building product. So if you have suppliers who are innovative, procurement can be part of that product development life cycle.
Okay.
So when we talk about strategic procurement, it really is a whole end-to-end automated process that can deliver more value in those different areas.
Okay, fantastic. So I think we got a pretty good feel for what you do. All right, so on to our topic of capturing the attention of customers and prospects with great marketing campaigns. So my first question is, how do you focus your campaign resources, things like money and people, against the sweet spot of your addressable market?
Yeah, you said it. You hit the nail on the head. It is getting harder and harder to differentiate product. Everyone's it's better, faster, cheaper. And you have to kind of go beyond that. So certainly it has to be a very focused campaign. There are a few things you have to do first, and that is, make sure you have marketing and sales alignment as to what is your ideal customer profile. And believe it or not, if you go into organizations, they're not always aligned. So that's first and foremost, what is your ideal customer profile? So is it a $1 billion plus company in certain vertical industries? And then you look at the personas, and then you say, okay, I'm going to hit, directors and VPs, or I'm going to hit the influencers. So then you look at your personas and say, okay, what are those messages? And then you have to figure out, okay, how to best reach them. What are all the touch points, social media and email campaigns and social selling, all those things. You have to hit them from every angle because your competitors are doing the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. I love the focus on the ideal customer profile and the personas, because the question was around focusing these campaign resources. And with limited money, limited staff, no one has an unlimited budget for either. Getting targeted is really important, and that's a good way to think about that. All right, my next question has got to do with competition. And as you said, it's getting harder and harder to differentiate these days. There's a lot of noise on the line, if you will. So my question is, are you more active, less active, or equally as active as your competitors going after this ICP? And how did you determine this?
Well, it's interesting because it certainly depends on who you're competing against, how big their budgets are. Are they, are they profitable companies, not profitable companies that, just have big marketing budgets and are just trying to get mind share. And so, we definitely keep on top of how our competitors are reaching the market. I would say, so it's also the level of maturity of your organization. Are you a pretty established company? Or are you a new company? So that'll change your strategy a little bit. But as far as where Bravo Solution is concerned is we really had to, originally we weren't playing their game, right? We were doing very heavy, just the market spraying and not really targeting and really focusing on big issues and integrated campaigns with webinars. And so I would say now we are at par. We are doing everything they're doing. But we had to do an analysis of where are they attending, what are they saying in their blogs, and what kind of webinars and topics are they doing so that we can look at what they're doing, but also see if we can differentiate different messages.
Okay, fantastic. So the competitive analysis, sometimes people do mystery shopping, if you will. So there's a variety of different ways that you can determine this, but it's an important question because, if we're going to try to generate a return on that campaign dollar, if we're getting outshouted, sometimes it's hard to do. If you're competing with a huge company that can outspend you, then it's about spending smarter and doing things smarter versus, doing lots of things. All right. So let me go to my third and final question for segment one, then we'll take a quick break. And it's on this theme of competition, but a slight twist to it, which is, are you competing with non-traditional competitors when competing for attention?
Well, certainly we're competing with budgets. Yeah, so when you look at an IT budget, even how much money procurement has, a lot of times we have to help create a business case that you think you're doing well enough, but you're not really doing. You're not outperforming your competitors. So it really is a matter of just trying to create a compelling event because you're competing with other dollars, and sometimes they don't even have the dollars for your solution. So you have to help create a compelling event sometimes. So we're competing with every dollar spent in supply chain. We're part of an ecosystem of supply chain process. So everyone has to get a little bit of everything, so really important for us to make sure that procurement gets that spend, because sometimes we're competing against big ERP companies where it's just kind of bundled in. So we have to kind of show, look, you're not getting the value you need or the capabilities you need. So we have to kind of create like a new way of thinking sometimes because we're competing with so many other supply chain applications.
Right. That was a great example right there. One that I would offer the audience is, here we are on a podcast, and we're competing for the attention of the audience. And as it relates to this show, my number one competitor is a podcast put on by ESPN called Pardon the Interruption, which is a sports talk show. Now, you would say, Greg, you guys are a management consulting company that specializes in sales and marketing. How could you be competing with ESPN? Well, my client, my demographic, my firmographic profile, they're sports nuts, and they listen to that show. So that's what I mean when I say competing for attention. Attention is the precious asset here. So that's the thing to keep our eyes on. All right, we're going to take a quick break. During the break, I want you to think about the 3 questions I asked Andrea. Do you know the answers to them? And do you like the answers? If not, we can help you. Consider having one of our experts spend some time with you in a workshop. If you want to get a feel for what's covered in this workshop, go to sbi.tips/2017 workbook and download a copy of the workbook we use in these sessions. And turn to pages 185 to 189. Those are the pages that deal with this issue. Okay, you're listening to the SBI podcast. We'll be back in 20 seconds.
Meet Tom. He's the CEO of a leading medical device company, and this is his business partner, the latest SBI workbook. Every day, Tom uses the workbook to guide his sales and marketing vision. The yellow sticky? That's his corporate strategy. The pink sticky is product roadmap. The dog-eared section, that's where Tom's mapped out next year's growth plan. The stain on the cover, that's from the champagne he popped open when they made their Q4 number.
That was a good day, wasn't it, Mr. Workbook?
How do you SBI? Take it to the next level with the SBI Workbook. Order your copy today at howdoyousbi.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to the SBI Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Alexander, and today's guest is Andrea Brody. She's the Chief Marketing Officer at Bravo Solution. Today we are demonstrating how to capture the attention of customers and prospects with great marketing campaigns, and we're going to jump back into the questions. And here we're going to kind of dissect campaigns, if you will. And Andrea, I'm going to ask you kind of, think of this as like a rapid-fire checklist section, if you will. For each campaign, I'd like you to explain to the audience how do you do that particular element of the campaign. So for example, how do you determine the campaign objective?
So again, when you do the campaign objective is, okay, you really have to align with sales and your revenue numbers and your targets, and do you have new product introductions? So we usually develop what we call a campaign brief. So we say, okay, what's the purpose of this campaign? What ultimately do we want to achieve? Is it more thought leadership? Is it we want to introduce them to a new product or a new concept? So we really first develop what the goal is, do we want them to download something, buy something, try something? And again, the campaigns we'll develop is really in alignment with sales and corporate objectives as to, okay, do we want to increase a new product, revenue generation, or do we just need to do awareness? So you really have to lay that out first.
Right. I know it sounds like a basic question, but you'd be surprised how many campaigns I see, and I ask them, what's the objective of the campaign? And they don't have an answer. So you just gave us several things to think about there. So it's an obvious statement, but sometimes the best ideas are the simplest ones. So each campaign's got to have an objective, right? All right. Let's go to the next component of campaign planning, if you will, which is the timeline. So how do you establish a campaign timeline?
You know what? It's not easy to do. I mean, the timeline is, again, we look at things like, okay, do we need fast time to revenue? Are there things that we're trying to influence, in your revenue or continued pipeline generation? So that kind of drives our timeline as far as, okay, look, our campaign objective is to, get 50 try and buys, for example. Yep. And within what time, because if you kind of back the timeline in, is like, okay, how long is a sales cycle? And so, again, it does go back to the objectives as to, ultimately, what are you trying to influence and impact? And then you back that in. So it's not a very easy question. It's not a very easy answer. But certainly it's based on what your ultimate objective is. It's just, awareness and influence. It could be over a long period of time. If it's revenue impacting, then you're going to do short bursts of things and introduce different types of calls to action.
Yeah, and I do think it depends on the campaign for sure. One easy tip for the audience is that, think about the lead cycle time. So how does it take to go from the top of the funnel to the bottom funnel? Add that to the opportunity cycle time. So how long does it take for a salesperson to close a deal? And then you work backwards from the revenue objective. If you slam those two cycle times together, you can kind of figure out what a timeline might need to be. However, in some campaigns that run in perpetuity, for example, we publish a quarterly magazine, and we run a campaign in perpetuity to try to get subscribers to the magazine. So there's really no start and stop to that campaign. It just goes on and on and on. But it's an interesting question. And for those campaigns that are really revenue-focused campaigns as opposed to maybe brand awareness campaigns or things of that nature, it's important to establish a timeline. All right, the next question, which is budget. So each campaign has a budget associated with it. How do you figure that out?
Well, usually we look at budgets, on an annual basis and say, okay, how many How many different types of campaigns do we want to do, and what does that take to do that? The great thing about the automation is, you can do a lot of things. It's almost like sunk cost in the beginning. If you're going to do webinars and emails, and those are. I don't want to say free, but it's resource and time. But still, you can execute things quite quickly. But so really in the beginning is what are we trying to accomplish through the different integrated channels, whether it's webinars, email campaigns, the social. So the great news is we can execute a campaign quite quickly with very little budget unless we're sponsoring an event or something like that. Yeah. But when you do email and social media and there are things like starting to use LinkedIn advertising. You have to kind of budget for those, and that's an art at this point. It's pretty hard to make a good guess on that. But you kind of just look at your whole integrated program and decide, okay, what is that additional cost?
Yeah, one thing that I've seen clients do recently, and it's hard to do, so I'm certainly not suggesting that this is a best practice in any way, but if you can work backwards from your revenue objective and you know what it costs to acquire a customer, and you think about the activities that are associated with acquiring that customer, both in the sales force and the marketing force, you can kind of do a back of the envelope budget analysis on which campaigns should get which budget dollar. Think of your budget as a pie, and you got pieces of the pie, and you can kind of slice up your budget that way. So maybe that might be helpful for some of those in the audience. Okay, let's go to the next one, which is how do you forecast results for the campaign prior to launch?
So, what you have to decide what's the definition of a result. Ultimately, we look at things like, different measurements is, okay, we want to add, 25% new contacts. Or we want to, ultimately we look at revenue objectives of MQLs and SQLs. But, when you execute a campaign, you're going to look at what was your call to action, kind of set a goal from there as to, what was the objective if it was to, like I said, increase, your, like for us, we're trying to increase our contact database. And so that's one of those measurements is how many new contacts did we get? How many of them turned into MQLs? How many of them turned to SQLs? And you can go on from there as how many turned into opportunities. So we'll track that, across the life cycle. But for each campaign, we try to identify ultimately it's going to be, did they become a customer? Yeah. But at a campaign level is, you have to look at those other measurements.
Yeah. So in that example, right, so let's say contacts is the objective. You want to add 25% more contacts, which is a typical objective for that type of campaign. After you have experimented for a while and you have your automation tool set up, you can kind of reverse engineer it. So last time we did something similar to this, it added 300 contacts or whatever the number is. So if we do that again, it's likely to produce the same result. If we want more than those, what are we going to do differently? If we run it again, do we have a tired audience? So maybe it's going to be less. So the important thing here is to try to, now forecasting is not as precise as you might think. It's a little bit of art and a little bit of science, but as you're matching up a budget with a result, try to use some data to predict the result, and usually executives respond well to that. All right, next one is identifying the personas that you need to reach. So I think you mentioned in the first segment that as part of your ICP process, you create personas. So do you select campaigns by persona, or do you run all your campaigns against all your personas?
No, we definitely do it by persona. Again, based on the campaign, is it more of, a strategic influence and awareness? You might go at a at the C-level suite, or, a higher message about earnings per share and savings, where for those people like director and VP levels who are actually tasked with, look, we need to automate and we need to look at tools, we'll focus on, efficiency and effectiveness and time savings and more value to the business, that kind of thing. So you absolutely have to do it by persona because the pain points are different.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Okay, I'm going to kind of lump the next three together because I think they're related. So it's how do you develop a clean and accurate list, develop an offer that's going to go against that list, and then push that offer through the channel. So how do you pick the right channel? So help the audience think through those three things.
So cleaning the list, that's a full-time job.
It is.
You definitely, and again at Bravo Solution, it's a 15-year-old company, and I've been here a year and a half, and we looked at the database and said, wow, it's kind of tired. We were also getting lots of bounce rates, so we had to go in and, we made a little bit of investment of cleaning the data, running it, with a company to align the industries so that we can really do targeted campaigns. It's a full-time job, and there's no easy way to do it, but it has to be part of your cadence and operating rhythm, or else your execution will be really poor. Your second question was about?
It was about creating offers.
Yeah, creating offers. It's interesting because you've got to figure out what's that call to action that's going to make them buy. And it's really, trying different things. We're executing on a campaign that says, we'll take an existing sourcing event for free and show you, the additional savings. So we tried to make it no risk. You already have the data, no big deal. So we thought, we could, and to try to just give some quantitative results is like, we can show you probably could have gotten 20% more savings. Is that compelling enough? So the offers are, it's getting tougher and tougher. What's going to make them, pick up that phone and say, yeah, I'm interested, but really we're constantly trying to be creative as to what's the biggest pain point and how can we show them with very little risk.
And then the last one was selecting the channels.
So channels from a sales perspective or the marketing channels?
A marketing perspective. So you have this offer. Do you push it through email? Do you push it through social? What are the channels you use to get the offer out there?
Yes, and yes. I mean, it's everywhere they are. I mean, some offers. So if we're going to do, a free trial, well, we might not push that through social media, but we'll push the idea. So, depending on the offer, you don't want to tax the organization if you're doing a try and buy, or we'll do an assessment because the company might not be able to deliver, but. I'm a firm believer in every channel is really important, and you don't know where they are, so you kind of have to be everywhere.
Yeah, okay. I had a client say to me the other day, actually a couple months back, when I asked that question about how do you create great offers, and the client said, I want to be in the painkiller business, not the vitamin business, which I thought was a great explanation. Painkiller says when you're in pain, you're going to take the pill. Vitamins, you might forget on Monday and Tuesday and maybe Thursday because, you don't have acute pain to address. So for the audience, maybe think about that. Is this offer that I'm creating, how compelling is it? Is it a painkiller or a vitamin? And as it relates to channels, the channels are exploding. I mean, there's so many different ways to reach customers these days. And I think a helpful tip is to think about the demographic profile of the audience. So for example, millennials, they don't pay attention to email. But they'll respond to a text. Baby boomers, they're not going to respond to a text. They'll think that's invasion of privacy, but they may pay attention to your email. So matching the channel to the demographic profile and how they want to engage, I think, is another idea to consider. Okay, let's take another break. Before you come back to this show, head over to Apple's App Store and download the SBI app. Now, why would you want to do that? This allows you to get all of SBI's sales and marketing content, such as this show, easily on your phone. So if you're suffering from too many emails and you want to make this easy, head over to the App Store and get our app. Okay, one more segment with Andrea after the break. We'll be back in a second.
Meet Bruce. He's CMO for a pharma company in the Midwest. Every Saturday morning, he heads to his favorite coffee shop to watch SBI TV.
Dedicated to helping you make your number.
It's how he keeps on top of trends and learns about emerging best practices direct from top marketing leaders.
You don't want to be marching up the hill and look behind and no one is following.
For Bruce, it provides the jolt of inspiration he needs to stay on top of his game. That, along with his venti triple shot half-sweet non-fat soy hazelnut macchiato extra whip. How do you SBI? Take it to the next level with an SBI workshop. Learn more at howdoyousbi.com.
Okay, this is our last segment with Andrea, demonstrating how to capture the attention of customers and prospects with great marketing campaigns. In this segment, I'm going to dial up the level of sophistication a bit to reward those of you who have stayed to the very end of the show. I appreciate you hanging in there with us, and hopefully I can return the favor by giving you some additional value. So we're going to use the same format here. I'm going to kind of go down a checklist for each campaign. So, for example, for each campaign, Andrea, how do you determine the correct number and type of touch points?
So determining the correct number and touch points, again, you have to know your audience, as you had mentioned earlier in the segment, is, what do they respond to? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on YouTube? Are they on, what is your personas and where are they? So our touch points, we know, what they look at. They're also in other types of procurement professional organizations, so we try to reach them that way as well. So the touch points, there are multi-touch points. Wherever, like I said, wherever our audience is, we try to touch them in a way every time. We can't be guaranteed that they'll be paying attention if we're sending an email, but if they're on Twitter, if they're on LinkedIn, which we know that they are, as well as they're very involved in some of the professional organizations, and so we'll try to reach them that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Next question regarding for the campaign, again, is choosing the media mix. So how do you think through media mix?
Again, it's really knowing your audiences. Yeah. Where do they go to get information? Mm-hmm. And we kind of, every time we have customer events or we're interacting with customers, we're always asking them, where do you get your information? What's your most valuable resource? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Twitter? What are the types of things that you look for? Honestly, our approach is it the mix? We know we know all the channels, and we try to take advantage of those channels. So it is a mix. It's going to be email, it's going to be Twitter and LinkedIn, and yep. Some white papers and lead gen with other procurement professional organizations.
So I did a poor job of asking that question. I apologize. When I mean media mix, I mean video, audio, text, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's always, you need budget. So we try to do everything. Video tends to be more expensive, but we're looking for different ways to, procure that ourselves. So definitely, we are finding videos being really helpful, the infographics, the white papers. It's hard to say, well, it's 60% of this, and we look at the buyer's journey and we kind of look at our content and say, okay, within our buyer's journey and within our personas, we try to at least have a multimedia mix mm-hmm. for each of those areas.
Yeah, okay, very good. All right, I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit just in the spirit of time. Earlier you talked about automation, so I guess let me ask this question. So it sounds like you stood up some systems and hired some people and set them up to convert inquiries into purchasing intent is how I review that. So how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, it's an art. So we have a marketing automation tool. We've set up lead scoring, but you have to be, what we've learned is you have to be really, really careful with that lead scoring is, okay, we know that if someone is an ICP, the verticals we want and the size of company that we want. So immediately that's someone, that we're interested in. And then we look at their digital body language and say, certainly if they submit a contact us form, we'll do that. But if they're downloading white papers or they've been on our site, it picks up their lead score. Mm-hmm. And then once they hit a certain lead score, that is there's a notification that goes to our account development managers who do an outreach and try to qualify them, and then it gets passed to sales.
Okay. As you're paying attention to digital body language, one of the things that we're seeing out there right now is this concept of laddering up your message. So what do I mean by that? So there's basic things that a potential customer might do. Easy digital body language, download a white paper. And then there's things that become more difficult. For example, subscribe to something, where they give you permission to send them something all the time. Or let's say somebody watches a video, that might be a 30-minute time investment versus reading a blog post, which might be a 5-minute time investment. So this idea of laddering up the message and the level of engagement, leading ultimately to that call to action, which is an engagement with a sales team. This is an emerging best practice. I don't know if you've experimented with this, but I guess I'll ask that. Have you experimented with it? What have the results been? What do you just think overall about the idea?
I like the idea. What we've tried to do is think about, look, we all know the buyer's journey about the awareness, the consideration, and the decision. We think there's, something before that is sometimes you aren't aware. So trying to create a compelling event that you can, cause an action. So what are the types of things that would influence that type of engagement? So I may not be aware, but if I read something, well, that's interesting. I thought I was doing a great job, but I didn't. So now we've even pushed them into a new, buyer's journey process. Mm-hmm. So I like the idea. It's, you have to be very in tune with the activity of, what's of interest and what's going to cause the influence, and what is each message through that journey. Yeah,
and I think this is the reason why so many people are investing so heavily in content marketing, because that's exactly what that's all about, right? So, well, all right. Well, listen, unfortunately, we are out of time. So, Andrea, that was a great demonstration on how to capture the attention of customers and prospects with great marketing campaigns. So, on behalf of our audience, I want to thank you for being our lab rat today and sharing your perspective on these concepts.
Thank you, Greg. It was a pleasure to be here.
Great. All right, and I want to thank the SBI audience for tuning in. You have made us the most popular podcast in this category for the 6th month in a row. So thank you for your loyalty. We'll keep working hard for you by bringing you great guests like we did today. If you want to learn more about this topic or the other areas we focus on, head over to our website at salesbenchmarkindex.com/register and create an account. This allows you to personalize your experience with our content. For instance, you can choose the topics you're interested in and how often you want to learn about them. Okay, that's it for today. As always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.